Okay. And Alina, let me know when we are live so we can start the conversation.
And I apologize for wearing a hat.
No worries.
I didn't get a chance to do my hair. It's so long right now, you guys.
Great. Alina, can you let us know if we are live?
We're live.
Fantastic. Woohoo. All right. Okay, fantastic. Let me just get this up here. Okay. Let me just set this up here. Alina, should we give folks a minute to log in, or are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our first Thip Khao virtual series. We are so excited to host three really fantastic panelists today, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. Before we really get into today's conversation, we just want to first acknowledge from the Legacies of War family, we know COVID-19 and this pandemic is impacting a lot of folks. And some, it may be their personal health, it may be the health of their families. We know that this is the greatest job loss since the Great Depression. And this has impacted particularly communities of color and vulnerable communities. And so we just want to acknowledge that. And for folks who are battling this crisis on the front lines, we want to send you our gratitude. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet, my name is Adam Thongsavat. I recently joined the board of Legacies of War and formerly served as a staff member in 2013. And I also want to thank Alina, who's on the call, who helped put all this together. So thank you very much. Let me just change the view here. Is that better, Alina? Let me just change the view. Okay, fantastic. And we also want to just wish everyone a happy Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. As you know, May in the United States is a celebration of API and API leaders that have made impacts on our society. And today we have three really remarkable leaders across public policy, the nonprofit sector, and academia to kind of share their perspective. Also, for those of you who may not be as familiar with Legacies of War, we are the leading US-based education and advocacy organization working to address the conflict in Laos during the Vietnam War era, and specifically issues around unexploded ordnance, or what we call UXO. From 1964 to 1973, more than 2 million tons of ordnance were dropped on Laos, over 500,000 bombing missions. That is equivalent to a plane load of bombs being dropped every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 years, making Laos the most heavily bombed country per capita in the history of the world. Unfortunately, a third of those bombs did not explode. And so this has left Laos contaminated with vast quantities of unexploded ordnance, and over 20,000 people have either been killed or injured by UXO, or what's referred to as bombies, in Laos since the bombing has ceased. And so through the work of Legacies and the many fantastic people and friends and allies who have helped advocate on this issue, funding has increased tenfold from 3 million in 2008 to 30 million in 2017. And you know, some of you may be wondering, what is a Thip Khao, or what is the Thip Khao Talk? This is really a creation from Alina and some of the Legacy staff. For those of you who eat a lot of sticky rice, a Thip Khao is what you put your rice in. and the Luang Prabang folks, which is where my parents are originally from, they call it the Thip Khao. So we're going to have a little conflict there about the name. We'll get to that another day. But this is a version of a brown bag lunch, and we wanted to make sure that there's a space for the Southeast Asian community and the broader audience to have a space to talk about issues that impact API people, but specifically Southeast Asian folks represented from Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and of course Hmong and Mien and Lu folks. And so with that, I would love to turn it over to our esteemed guest today, Senator Foung Hawj from the Minnesota State Legislature representing St. Paul. You just have a really incredible background. You are a leader in the community. You are a leader nationally. Would love if you could kick us off.
Oh, thank you very much, and Sabadi Tukpan. Yeah, thank you, Adam, for hosting a conversation about the legacy of war. And this year is also our 45th anniversary of the legacy of war. It was a turbulent time then, and I was a young man then. It's hard to forget, we can forgive time, but we cannot forget the moment that happened to us. So I appreciate you invited me here, and I will stand for question further, but I really appreciate this moment and be able to connect with multi-generation of people. Sooner or later, folks of my generation and the older generation who are even have greater impacted by the Vietnam War, the secret war in Laos, will be gone. I'm in my mid 50 already, and so I'm still going to be around if according to health statistics, likely I'll be around a little longer. But our generation are slowly disappearing, and we need to communicate our experience, our life experience, to the younger generation, those who are born here in the United States, or those who are of the new generation that are around the world in our diaspora that are paying attention to their home country.
I appreciate that, Senator. And thank you for your work. Alina had mentioned in doing some background research that you were instrumental in Lao and Hmong Veterans Remembrance Day in Minnesota. So we would love to hear more about that as well.
Yes, and
upon this reflection.
That's coming up on May 14th. Is on the Minnesota State statute that every year, May 14th, is a day for us to remember those who fought and sacrificed their life for the freedom of, from outside, the democracy from outside, and it's in the state law. The day is officially coined as the Special Guerrilla Units Remembrance Day as of May 15th, and maybe later, if I can go online and just pull out the insert of what's on there. But I know that the state of Wisconsin is also ready to sign to law as of May 14th.
Fantastic.
We did not know that COVID-19 will hit us, and the Lao and Hmong veterans of Wisconsin already plan on to have a signing moment to celebrate that on May 14th. But the legislation was ready for Governor Evers to sign, but they said we're gonna wait till we have larger ceremony and you sign there. But now with COVID-19, they can't do that. So I'm sure they're gonna electronically sign into law in the state of Wisconsin. So and following that, I'm sure Michigan will follow, and other state will follow too. Other state who felt that who felt and truly believe that we should remember the service and sacrifice of our veterans, and also those who perish along the way, those who want so much to be in this country but didn't get the chance to, and that affected all people who came to this country or to our diaspora continent as refugees.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your leadership on that issue and so many more in Minnesota and abroad. Quyen, we would love to go to you next. Quyen represents SEARAC, the Southeast Asian Action Resource Center, based in Washington, D.C. She's really a fantastic leader for our community. we would love to hear a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. And thank you to the Legacies family for inviting us. We are such.
Oh, Quinn, I think you're muted.
Just kidding. Hi, everyone. I know how to work Zoom. My name is Quinn. I have the honor and privilege of being SEARAC's executive director. I am our fourth executive director and our first second generation executive director. So I identify as being second generation Vietnamese American. And I would say I just have, it is such a privilege to be able to continue our community's legacy of fighting for freedom and fighting for justice. And I'm a proud ally with the Lao community and the incredible work that you all are doing.
Thank you so much, Quinn. And we have some follow-up questions for Quinn later on about SEARAC's work that's so important to the resettlement history. So we'll definitely get to that. Dr. Vinya from San Francisco, Executive Director of the Center for Lao Studies and also the founder of the institution. Would love if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about the work that you do.
Adam for the Thip Khao Talk. Yes, I agree. The Long Prabang call it Thip Khao instead of Thip Khao. So I'm from the South, so we call it Thip Khao. Yes. So yes, as Adam mentioned, I am the executive director of the Center for Lao Studies. We're based here in San Francisco Bay Area. We've been around for over 10 years, since 2005, 15 years to be exact. So we're very proud to have worked with, I also continue to work with Legacies of War in the past and also in the present. And we hope to do many important work with Legacies as well moving forward. So I'm very happy to be here representing the academic side of the Lao community. Thank you for having me.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Vinya. So this, we would love to, before we kind of get in a little deeper into some of the policy questions, we specifically reached out to all three of you because you have very unique perspectives as part of the resettlement process and how your families, Vietnamese Americans, Hmong Americans, Lao Americans, of how your families came to the United States. And so if you can just share a little bit about your family story, because that's so important as part of our diaspora's history and shared story. We would love to hear that. And what did resettlement look like for you? Let's start with Quinn.
Great, thanks, Adam. So as a second generation Vietnamese American, my story really begins with my parents' story as they fled after the Vietnam War as boat people. They were able to come here to the US in 1980 after being sponsored by my family who had fought with the American side in South Vietnam and were actually resettled here in the US a little bit earlier than 1980. So that's how my parents were able to make it to the US, and they shared that they fell in love in the refugee camps. My mom shared that she saw my dad holding one of his nieces, and she felt like she had never seen someone who showed so much love to someone who was so vulnerable. And so that story of love and resilience is one that continued to define my experience as a Vietnamese American. I would say as a second generation Vietnamese American, I grew up in low-income communities, went to low-resourced schools, saw my cousins who came over as 1.5 generation folks. So they came over as teenagers, really struggle through the education system, fall through the criminal justice system. And today we continue to struggle through some of the same challenges of making sure that we still have a roof over our heads and now taking care of our next generation. But at the same time, being really privileged to be part of an organization such as SEARAC that continues to call for advocacy change with so many of the challenges that our community members continue to face 45 years later.
Thank you for sharing, Quinn. Senator, I know your family has deep roots as part of the Vietnam War era conflict and the Secret War. If you can just share a little bit about your family's story and the broader Hmong American experience, and specifically how you got to Minnesota.
Sure. I was born in the in the clandestine airfield of Long Chang. You know, as a CIA operation at that time. During that time, in 1965, and I lived there until the age of 6, and still go visit there every once in a while. My father was a military diplomat and relocated to the city of Vientiane. So that's how I pick up my Lao. I have Vientiane accent. So earlier
it's
when you
very
mentioned
good. I like it. Yeah, it's very good.
All I know is Thip Khao. So I still can maintain my Lao accent quite well. It's almost, I hardly bump into many Lao people in the state of Minnesota, but when I do, you know, it's almost every, you know, when I do, we hardly speak Lao to each other. We kind of just go ahead and speak English. So, but I still can maintain my Lao Vientiane accent, you know, quite naturally. So I was born in the city of Long Chang, and again moved to Vientiane at the age of 6 and go to school there. And every now and then we'll visit the highland of Laos and seen a lot of traumatic incidents. You know, people in body bag, people who go to war and never came back. So that's part of my early experience. And then May 22nd. Of 1975, you know, my family chose to cross Mekong River to the refugee camp of Thailand, and it's the moment when I noticed that my father was put in line and frisked, you know, by security as we crossed over Thailand. And I'm skipping here because it's going to be a long story. There was, you know, a number of incidents happened before we get across, you know, and those are sad moment and a traumatic moment. I will save that for a later time. But the moment that we got over to the Thai border and seeing security frisk my father, like any ordinary person, although he does have a military status, at the age of 10 and a half, I realized that things not going to be the same, and it will be different. I'm not going to see my Dong Pai Na. You know, Dong Pai Na is a major street in the capital of in Vientiane. I'm not going to see my Dong Pai Na surrounding anymore. And so then we live in a refugee camp for about a year, and then sponsored to United States to the state of South Dakota. We lived there for quite some time, and then moved to Texas. And the first 10 Texas lived there for a couple of years, and then to the state of Kansas, where I lived the first 10 years of my life in the United States, in the state of Kansas, and graduated from there, and then moved to Minnesota, first to do a broadcasting program, TV program, to educate the Hmong community here about healthcare, staying healthy. And I've been here ever since. I've been in the state of Minnesota here, you know, over 20 years now, and I live pretty much in the east side St. Paul. And so I decided in 2010 and 2013, I ran twice. I succeeded the second time. I thought that I should dedicate my life toward public servants, you know, so I ran in 2012 and won the seat, and have been serving as a state senator ever since.
Fantastic. And it's so neat to see as a Southeast Asian kid who grew up in Merced. You know, it's so neat to see folks who look like me in positions like you and Quyen and Dr. Vinya. It's really inspiring, and just thank you for taking the leap, because I'm sure when you first ran, there were not a lot of folks that look like you who were in the Capitol. And so you have my gratitude for taking that jump.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a lot of history ahead of that too. You know, we in the state of Minnesota, actually, I am the third Hmong American legislator in the state of Minnesota history. There were, the first one was State Senator Mi Mo, who now in DC work closely with SEARAC, you know, and so, and represents Thip Khao. Both of them are trailblazer. Although the only difference is that I'm a little bit older than both of them, you know. But
that's okay. We're not holding it against you, Senator. Don't worry.
I'm gonna get criticized, you know, because you know, English is still far from English is my second language, and you know, I have to take ESL growing up and you know, being here in high school, and you know, I even get sometimes criticized by my closest friends that, oh, Senator, you are on the fence. You almost not, you know, you almost not, you know, English fluent, but you are doing okay, you know. So yeah, you got it, Senator. Yeah, thank you.
There are some audience questions coming in, so I definitely do want to make some time for that. I would like to kind of transition to a little bit more specific questions for your expertise in your organizations. Dr. Vinya, you know, a lot of what you do, you know, you're providing a space and resource for the younger generation to, you know, learn more about the Lao culture and the broader, very diverse ethnic cultures and ethnic minorities of Laos as well. For audience members who may not be as familiar with the Vietnam War and its aftermath, what do you think is the most important legacy we can share with the younger generation, folks who, you know, may not have an uncle or an auntie, a parent, a grandpa to kind of have that direct knowledge and resource from?
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing you brought up that question because we do have one of our many projects is the traveling exhibit that we have going on. And right now it's being displayed at the Richmond Museum here in the Bay Area. Of course, nobody can see it right now because it's close due to the lockdown, but we're hoping to extend that until perhaps the end of June and possibly the end of July, just because once we opened, the lockdown took place. So it pretty much we had it set up for ghosts to go there and visit. But yeah, that's one of the many projects that we have, and we do encourage people from our own community as well as the outside community to come and you know, walk through the exhibit and learn about our history and why are the refugees from Laos here in the United States? What are the reasons? And besides just the fact that the Secret War took place in Laos, there's other useful and very interesting information about different ethnic groups from Laos. We try to cover the more
how many ethnic groups are there, Dr. Vinya, in Laos? Like, how many recognized ethnic groups are there?
They keep changing the numbers depending on the classification. So I would say over 60 right now. Of course, you have groups that are very similar and they are clumped together, you know, but there's officially 60, maybe 64 recognized ethnic groups from Laos. And we all have our own language, culture, and traditions, and even, you know, beliefs. So it's very different in a country of about 7 million people. We have to have this many different ethnic groups, but we are a diverse group of people coming from Laos, and some of the well-known ethnic groups here in the United States are the Lowland Lao, the Hmong, the Khmu, the Mien, Thai Lam, Thai Lu, you know, some of these groups are here in the United States who sided with the United States during the war, and we happen, you know, to have lost the war, and here we are in the United States. One of the people that fought with the Lao royal government was my father. He, you know, was with the United States side of the war, and when that war ended, he was sent to a re-education camp. So these are some of the issues that we touch in our exhibit when we travel around California for now. So we have been to Redding, San Diego, now it's in the Bay Area. We're planning to do 2 more cities, Sacramento and Fresno. And we focus on 4 different ethnic groups, the Khmu, the Mien, the Hmong, and the Lao. So those are the groups that we focus on,
I appreciate that you mentioned that, Dr. Vinya, because I think sometimes when people think of Laos, they kind of think of only 2 main groups, right? Lao folks and Hmong folks, and they forget how diverse just within a small country like Laos is. how truly diverse it is ethnically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, with the census this year, we have two groups. So we have the Laotians, which basically includes everybody else except the Hmong, because the Hmong have their own category, and because there's a larger number of Hmong population in the United States, but the rest of us are classified under Laotians, which encompass the other ethnic groups from Laos.
Fantastic. I like the census plug, Dr. Vinya. Good job.
Yeah.
We gotta do our census. Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Quyen for this next question, and we can end with the senator, and I would love to go to audience questions. And so if you're on Facebook Live, chat them, and then Alina will send them to us. Quyen, SEARAC is such an integral part of why so many Southeast Asian Americans have resettled to the United States. And so would love for you to kind of educate us and give us some light on in terms of the 1980 Refugee Act and the significance of this legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. So SEARAC was founded in 1979 as the Indochina Resource Action Center. And one of the legacies of the organization was actually passing the 1980 Refugee Act. And the reason for that is because this organization was formed by American humanitarians who really felt like the US needed to take responsibility for the biggest refugee exodus that the world had ever seen because of American forces. And so the passage of the 1980 Refugee Act was one of the key milestones of legislation that got passed, and it was responsible for over 1.3 million people who were able to come to the US as refugees, including folks like my parents who left as boat people from Vietnam, who risked their lives so that I could be free. And not just those 1.3 million, but their children, such as myself, and also families who were then sponsored by these refugees who were the first folks from their families to come to the US as well. And today our communities number over 3 million. So that act is really, really fundamental to why we're here in the US. And I'd say it also created our infrastructure now of how we resettle refugees from across the world, including the creation of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and also the creation of this idea of mutual assistance agencies, which were called as MAAs, as acronyms. And these were volunteer-led organizations from across the country that were Southeast Asian led and run, knowing that our communities know best and how to build strength and power and how to provide direct services to our communities. So that is a little bit of the legacy of that policy.
Super, fantastic. I feel like that is one of the most important pieces of legislation to specifically Southeast Asian Americans that just not enough people know about. So I'm glad you shared that, Quyen, and really thank you to SEARAC for making it all possible for my parents included to come to the United States and resettle in Minnesota, then Texas, and then California. So we thank SEARAC on behalf of everyone who's watching, and I'm sure many more. Senator, if I could pose a question to you,
Sure.
as the public policy leader on this call, we know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a dramatic increase of hate crimes, discriminatory action, harassment of Asian Americans. How do you think we can address this issue head on and support our fellow API folks?
There's several ways, and I have been very vocal about that when we first put the COVID-19 package number 1. I've been very vocal constantly every time when we talk about COVID-19. I always bring Asian American experience to the limelight because we know COVID-19 is real, but hate crime or discrimination or harassment toward Asian American is also real. And so I've been very vocal about that, and I have pushed the Department of Human Rights and also the governor of Minnesota to create a helpline, a discrimination helpline, so that folks who may be harassed in public that are not to the level where they have to call 911, then they can leave the information or leave the incident or the experience. They can leave the message and put a report officially to that discrimination helpline instead of put on social media, which is not officially logged in. So right now, we in the state of Minnesota, we have that helpline available in various Asian languages. You can call, and if you speak Hmong, Khmer, or other Karen or other language, that you can call and say you want to report an incident. And it's not just only for Asian who are victimized by the incident, but for anyone who can report seeing incident, then they can call and report. But if someone's facing a life-threatening incident, make sure you protect yourself first. Call 911 first before you make the report. And that report will aggregate into an information database where we could be used by nonprofit or state agency to look at certain area in our state that have harassment or discrimination incident more often, so then we can perhaps develop a cultural sensitive training in around that neighborhood. So I have been one, I've been vocal about this issue, and second, we had developed a helpline to intake reports from Asian Americans and anyone about any hate incident that they face. There's still more to do. I'm still fighting to get some small dollars to put into place so that they can help doing outreach or advocacy. And I've been working closely with coalition of Asian American leaders here to work on that funding component. But I know that in some aspect you would think it's ridiculous that people will connect Asian American or Chinese American to the virus. And as you see Asian American, then you point as you're the one, and that's ridiculous, but it's happening. It's happening even as in our Minnesota nice state. Some neighbor would put a sign that we are watching you and take your disease away. Put that sign on their Asian neighbor door. And I know that there's a few recent hate incidents that had occurred, and at the same time, I also tell my Asian American fellow, but that learn how to mitigate situation or learn how to diffuse situation. Don't try not to retaliate over incident because you're going to add on to the stupidity of thing. But this is just a way of saying it because we have a large population here, so you can't control everybody of how they react, and they have the right to react to defend themselves. But at the same time, we also try to reduce the breaking point of certain individuals that have been harassed. Asian American in general, without the COVID-19, have been facing harassment through time, and we are numb by harassment, as a matter of fact. But with COVID-19, it gives reason for people who filled with hate to point the finger back at us again.
To act on it.
Although we are numb, they could be a breaking point. And we have seen incident when Asian American, or in particular my culture, my Hmong culture being a subgroup throughout time, when we have a breaking point, it's hard to control.
I appreciate that, Senator, and thank you for your work on the hotline. I hope you're able to secure funding for that. Would love to go to audience questions. We have an audience question from Titus Peachy, who has done a ton of work on the UXO issue, and it just has been a fantastic ally for our community. His question is, how have your communities dealt with the trauma of war, the departure from your land of birth? Are there traditional ways of finding resilience from trauma that you have used, or that have you found helpful resources here in the United States? Why don't we go to Dr. Vinya to kick it off, and we can go to Quyen and the Senator.
Sure. Excellent question, Titus. Thank you for bringing that up. like I said, the Center for Lao Studies, we do a lot of programs, and one of the programs we had in the past was the mental health project. So it's sad that a lot of our Asian communities, and I speak for the Lao community, that we don't recognize mental health as one of the health problems in the communities. We often just brush it aside and think it's someone who suffers from it might be crazy or a lunatic or something out of the ordinary. So PTSD is a big issue. One of the things that Lao communities face, because some of us have served in the militaries, have gone through war and fight in wars, and even been in re-education camp. And so when they come to the United States, even though they are safe and it's a better life, there's still the thought's still there because they suffer tremendously in the past. So this is one of the things that some of the Lao people that we interview for the project, the traveling exhibit, they suffer from PTSD. You know, a few of them mentioned that they still have nightmares. I mean, it's less frequent than when they first came to the United States, but it's still happening. And they often do not seek professional help because, first of all, there's no one or at least not too many people who speak the language, know the culture, and able to communicate with them and able to provide the help that they need. And second of all, they don't believe that would somehow help them. And so many people just suffer in silence. Some, may find other ways to get better or at least improve the condition. Religion plays a big part in some of the lowland Lao who are Buddhists. So oftentimes they go to the temple, make merits and pray. Other times they might even go see, like, I don't know, a palm reader or something, or other traditional belief, the Basi ceremony to bring back all the Quan or the different spirits back to your body. So there's many different ways, the traditional ways that people, practice here in the United States in order to at least to bring some sort of closure or healing. But I think it's always going to be there. PTSD is one of those things that's very hard to cure, to get rid of. You can somehow maybe make it less, but it's still going to linger around. And we see that after 40 years here in the United States, people still have nightmares. They still have, the wet, the sweat. I mean, the dream that they sweat, I guess that's what they call it. Many of those still suffering from it. And I know that from firsthand experience by interviewing these folks in the Lao community.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Vinya. I think it's a great question because I think mental health, your father, like my father, experienced re-education camps, and people forget that in the trauma of war, those things don't necessarily go away overnight. So I appreciate you sharing that, Dr. Vinya, and just hopefully it encourages others to seek help the way they find fit, the way they see fit. Quinn, same question for you in terms of Titus's question about resilience and how folks can go to seek support.
Yeah, great question. One of the beautiful things that we've been seeing across the country is how folks are using storytelling to heal. And it's done in so many different communities in language. Sometimes it's done across generations. And one of the projects that one of our partners have been working on is called the Vietnamese American Journey Project, which uses a narrative therapy approach to helping folks to write about their experience with war, with genocide, with survival, and acculturating here in the US, and using that as a process to heal through that storytelling process as well. And those stories are now on a website that is, some of the stories are in both Vietnamese and English. And I think that is one of the movements that is so inspiring across the country, is really reclaiming our stories and our narratives of resilience, of love, to really transform that pain into power. And so I think that is one of the most promising practices that we've seen. And I know Legacies does a lot of work around storytelling too.
Thank you, Quinn. And I know we're kind of getting close to time, and so I know Alina is going to Alina is going to share a poll afterwards. There are a lot of topics on this call. We kind of wanted to open up a little bit more broad because we know there are just so many issues and so many thought leaders to interview, to highlight. And so if there are other speakers that you think we should be reaching out to in the community, or someone who can, you know, share their story or share the stories of others, we would love to hear from them. So look out from that from Alina. And would love to ask the senator, her, you know, in celebration and in light of APA Heritage Month, what is your call to action to the community?
Yeah, you know, it helped me think back to the days when we first arrived. You know, I arrived here in the United States in 1976, and Southeast Asian refugees was not in the size that we are now. And we all coming together very closely as one family, whether you're Vietnamese, Lao, Cambodian, Hmong, you know, we come together, even though we couldn't speak out each other's language. We're trying to gather together, you know, every weekend and just smile at each other and trying to share our food together. And we have not, our young people and our new generation, American-born Southeast Asian now, are friends with each other, and we have been intertwined by marriage. But I think that it's good to come together in celebration, the legacy of wars, you know, remembering our old experience coming together is important, you know, and our Southeast Asian family had that shared history early on from the late 1970 to the middle 1980, where we have not have cluster of our separate community. We come together more often. We meet each other quite often as family, and so I miss those moments. I miss those moments where, you know, we will go to the Nguyen family, or, you know, like the Un family with Cambodian, and the, you know, with Lao family, and we just come together. Our parents actually brought us together. You know, our parents actually brought us together and share each other's food and say, oh, we do have something in common, you know, not just the experience of war, but our food and our culture, and we're one Southeast Asian family. And that has not happened for some time. Now, every year I attend the Hmong New Year, I attend the Lao New Year, I attend the Vietnamese New Year, you know, and the Karen New Year, but they're all separate, you know, component. And I really miss the moment, and the reason I want to say it is that precious moment in our time as South Asian American, that our parents brought us together, you know, and have dinner, have picnic together every weekend, even though we can't speak each other's language at all, and we try to use English, you know. So
are you volunteering, Senator, for the next picnic in Minnesota?
Oh, I look forward to it, and I want to close with. I also want to close with this picture of the memorial here. Oh, sorry. I can't. Let me see if I'm.
If you just there you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We could see it.
Yeah. This memorial is in the state capitol mall, right in front of the Minnesota State Capitol Mall, and it tells it engraved a lot of history here. You know, at the bottom, the root, and when you have time, you come there. And May 14th, you know, I'm gonna go there to honor those that sacrificed in the war. You were talking about the let's see, what's the abbreviation for the uncover ordinance, right? You know, the
UXO.
UXO. You were mentioning about the UXO. Behind the, you know, the other side of the memorial engrave a lot of those images too, because it's we're all from Laos, and so we cannot ignore that we come from Laos, and Laos are devastated by, you know, the bombings that we face. This memorial, from this side, you see the engrave of John F. Kennedy and King Sysamouth shaking hand, and it went on and tell further story. But the other side actually tell about the unexploded ordinance. So just want to share with you. And this is in our state capitol mall. So May 14th, as we remember the suffering of our people, we also have a monument here to set in place to remember that we are Americans, and Americans do recognize us here from the state of Minnesota, and we are recognized just not people from Minnesota, but every service member and every people who have put their life on the line to rescue Americans during the war. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Senator. We really appreciate it, and for being a champion for that recognition and reflection and the monument to be there forever. Would love to close with Quyen and Dr. Vinya, if you have any last thoughts you want to share with our audience members and folks who may watch this later.
Should I go?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it's getting late, but I gotta get going anyways. Well, thank you so much for having me here for the Thip Khao Talk. Really enjoy it, and meeting both of you, Senator, and also Quyen, for joining this group. I assume this will continue, and there will be more interesting topics and discussions in the future. But for now, just wanted to leave everybody maybe a message to everybody to fill out the census form, and to make sure that your neighbors, friends, families, and everybody else who are in your immediate circle are able to do that. And there's resources out there in the Lao language and in multiple languages available. So make sure that you get counted, especially it's only done once every 10 years, and we want to be counted in the census for Southeast Asian communities. That is all the Lao, the Hmong, everybody else listening, please do your part and fill out the census. And thank you so much for having me here, Adams. I do want to leave that, something for folks who's listening now, with the work that Legacies is doing. It's just the beginning, even though they have done a great job in accomplishing so much within a short period of time. But there's still a lot more to be done. There's still a UXO in Laos that still affecting, harming people there every day, maiming and killing innocent victims in Laos that's left behind by the United States over 40 years ago. So even after the war has long been over, these people who grew up in a new era that has nothing to do with the war are still suffering the consequences. So we need to keep educating people, the public in our own community, what's going on in Laos, and try in every way that to remove the UXO that's there in Laos, and also to stop future incidents from happening around the world as well. I mean, there are cluster bombs still being dropped and still being used throughout the world. So we need to stop what's happening right now. Just to take Laos as an example, we need to learn from what's happening in Laos and use that also to prevent future incidents from happening. So thank you for having me here, Adam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vinya. We know you have a very busy day, and we couldn't think of a better person to help share this work with. And thank you for being just a huge champion of Legacies every step of the way. Nice. And Quyen, you get the last word.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Vinya, for plugging census so that I didn't have to. I would say one action you folks can do is actually join us in a Twitter storm next Wednesday, May 13th, for the celebration of Representative Alan Lowenthal's resolution that we were working on together that commemorates this year as the 45th year anniversary of the Southeast Asian American experience. The resolution really celebrates our history. It talks about the massive bombings that happened in Laos, and it also calls for the end to deportations and further equity in our communities, including education, health, and economic justice. I can share with Alina our digital organizing toolkit if folks want to join us next Wednesday. And I would say just a thank you to folks for joining us. We know that especially during this season with COVID-19, there is so much suffering and so much pain that our communities are experiencing. And what is moving us forward is really our legacy as survivors of war, survivors of genocide, survivors of famine, that we are stronger now than we were 45 years ago. And that strength continues to live in us as we build a better community and a better future for all of us. So just want to thank Legacies for creating this space for community and for dialogue, and really looking forward to seeing your work grow. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much to all our speakers. You were all fantastic. I wish we had more time. I think that between the three of you, you have so much wisdom and perspective and intellect to offer to the things that we're trying to tackle across our communities all throughout the United States. And we're really lucky to have you as public servants and as nonprofit directors and as folks who are, writing resources for us in the future and to learn about our own culture and identities. If you want to learn more, you can definitely go to legacesofwar.org to learn about our work, how we do it, the history of this really tragic a consequence of war. But I am an eternal optimist, and I do believe that this is an issue that we can solve in our lifetime. And for really tragic issues, that's not always the case. And so we should feel really heartened by that. And also for those of you who are listening, or those of you who have friends or would like to share your work, again, Alina is going to share out a poll after this to get feedback on this talk, but also learn about other speakers we can include to talk about the broader issues that we covered today. So with that, please stay healthy, please stay safe. Thank you to everyone, and as we celebrate APA Heritage Month, I hope you take an opportunity to reflect upon your own experience, reach out to the folks that you love, and just thank them for being, a leader, a support network to you, because we're all in this together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So D.
Sok D.
Yeah.